have Jane Richards from Imagen Insights coming up. We have Charlotte Ashton from SeenThis, and we also have Jonathan Harrison from 7stars. So come on up while I then give them a round of applause. So we're going to split the panels into two. The first panel are going to be tasked with talking about what can automation, AI, ChatGPT do? What is it capable of? What's the opportunities? We're seeing it as the industry's new toy. Is that a good thing? That's what these panelists are going to answer from me and from you. Before I do, quick show of hands. Who here has a ChatGPT login account and is using it? All right. Well, you're the people I'm expecting a question from. Keep that in mind. I'm going to start first. I'm going to come to you, Jay. How are you using automation in Imagen Insights? Tell me how you're using it. I'll just say to Jonathan and the same to you, Charlotte.
Wonderful. So, hi, firstly, everybody. Thank you for having us. So, in short, what we do at Imagen Insights, we enable brands like Apple, Amazon, Nike, so on and so on, to crowdsource qualitative insight from Gen Z within 72 hours, called Top Line Pitch. So, within the platform itself, when we initially started the business, what we found was that there was a whole bunch of responses to the community where there was sentiment, there was language breakdown that when we distilled it into English, we couldn't fully understand, and we were making mistakes when the research team were then trying to distill those insights. So what we actually use AI within the platform to do is actually, when people are responding to a brief for Nike or whoever it may be, the platform itself will actually clock if somebody has been taken it directly from the internet with regards to plagiarism, or if somebody has tried to repeat an answer throughout the entire process, or even more interesting is where somebody's actually, they've started off on one point, but then when you start a sentence and you get to the end of the sentence and you actually are not talking about the same thing, you're talking about the start of the sentence. So the platform will actually pull up the interesting parts that within that response, and it will automate that and flag that to the team. So the cool thing is that because the platform can do that, then when it comes to actual human beings reading through it, we would read at the start of the sentence, and by the time we get to the end, we're like, what the hell were they on about? But because the platform highlights the part that we should focus on, and that's automated, by the time it gets to human beings, it makes it much easier for them to actually engage with the brief.
It's like it knows our weaknesses. I like that scary shit.
Charlotte,
SeenThis, how are you using automation?
So SeenThis is an ad streaming company, and what we bring in is being able to stream ads programmatically anywhere. But I suppose the best way that we use our automation is more on our self-serve side of the business, where we have essentially like a simple banner builder where you can use that in a much easier, less ingrained DCO solution where it's very simple drag and drop. It's not overcomplicating anything. So I think on side of automation, it was more about simplifying rather than it necessarily learning and doing things to that nature. It's more about keeping out all the additional clicks out of the way, so that it's kind of like like when you were a kid making a picture and you just kind of stick the bits side by side together.
Thank you, Charlotte. Jonathan, coming to you, 7stars, clever agency, clever tech, clever automation.
Thank you for that. There are 7 of us with stars now, there's 300 of us. So we're a media agency, kind of, first and foremost. So we work with the likes of Rob at Gum and Paper on XYZ, so we do onboard a lot of off-the-shelf AI technology. Hopefully we scrutinise you as much as everyone else, Rob, and you can hold us to account there. I think around the automation is kind of an important place where we work as an agency. So my job is around transformation for our clients. I was hoping that ChatGPT, we could put a brief in, copy paste, and then it would give us the answer. It doesn't quite do that yet, unfortunately. But where we do use, I guess, automation is to try and take a lot of those complex agency tasks that take a lot of resource, take a lot of time, a lot of those monotonous tasks, and be able to use them to unlock some of the real human benefit from our planners and our people. And that's the real benefit that we see as an agency. I was hoping there would be a blue card, which was like a neutral.
We were going to have an orange card for neutral, but they didn't come in the pack. So. Jonathan, I'm going to stay with you. You just hit on a point there. This is about resources. Now, economic downturn, scary stuff going on, lots of redundancies. what's the impact? Let's talk about the positives. Let's look at the efficiency is paramount right now in the economic downturn. How does ChatGPT and automation support this and not go against it and end up being that resource that leads to exactly what we don't want it to do?
Yeah, great question. I think automation is the first one just to touch on there. I think the more that we can use it to unlock the real value behind the people that work at our agency is massively important, right? So what we don't want to be doing is charging clients, amounts that, they're just paying our people to do those tasks that we know that can be delivered in other ways. I think ChatGPT initially, obviously we got really excited, as you can imagine, we're a media agency, we love shiny new stuff. How can we use it in lots of different ways? I think one of the interesting things when we're looking at potential economic downturn, how we get the most from our people and the resources that we do have, is how can it do things that are more added value, I guess, for our clients or the businesses we work with. When I was thinking about those types of questions over the last few days, I think you can see a world at the moment where SMEs who potentially are looking to scale but don't have the capacity to be able to hire big teams but very quickly. You can see something like ChatGPT being a really useful tool at doing some of those tasks that they would normally have to hire for. Maybe those things that, analysing complex data sets that they just don't have the time to be able to answer the questions that would normally take them, a huge amount of research. I really see the benefit in those small, those SME type audiences. I think what I'm a little bit scared about is how some of our larger clients potentially might see the benefit of ChatGPT as a quick answer, something that's a really quick solution. I can just type in, well, what's the best thing for this sort of a campaign, and expect it to get the right answer, because as Rob, I think, really, it was really well said in the introduction, is you need that human lens, and if you don't ask the right question to something like ChatGPT or analyse the output, you're not going to get the answer you need.
Thank you, John. And I'm going to, on the second panel, keep this in mind because we're going to come to the reverse for you. But I'm going to come to you, Jay. Imagen Insights and the Gen Z audience that you work with and actually target as well. How is the ChatGPT going to be effective and efficient in content creation in your world? What do you see?
Interesting, good question. I actually saw an interesting article this morning, I think it was on Twitter, and it was saying that Coke have just hired Bain to basically use ChatGPT to basically just create a whole bunch of content and do a whole bunch of stuff for them, which is going to be, I'm actually most intrigued by how agencies are going to react to that, because it's undermining a lot of their business model. But from a, so that's just a side note, I don't know why I mentioned that, it was in my head and I had ADHD, so it came out. Part of the reason why I mentioned that is the content creation side of things is interesting, because when you're talking about Gen Z, you have to remember that they're digital natives, so they've always grown up with the technology. So with millennials, I'm old, well, I'm saying I'm old, but I'm an older millennial, and I know I look great. It's a wonderful skincare regime, but the interesting thing is with millennials is that we had to adopt technology. So remember when smartphones first came out and we were like, oh my god, I got a phone, and they've got a camera on the top turns. And with Gen Z, they're just used to software updates, they're used to things changing. So for them, AI is just that next step. It's just things adopting and changing. So we're already seeing within our community how they're using these things to actually do research. So with regards to them responding to briefs, they're not using ChatGPT to create responses, because we're asking them for their actual personal opinion. So you can't really use it for the opinions. If you keep refreshing on ChatGPT, it starts to come up the same things again and again and again. So it's very easy for our platform to spot that. But what they're using it for is research. So they can do, because we give them 24 hours to respond to a brief, so they're able to do a real deep dive. Historically, they'd have to sit on Google and try to figure it out. But with ChatGPT, they can get these other angles and the other positions from it. So from our perspective, it enables them to do more research, which then means from a content creation perspective, they can put out better content because they're able actually to look at it from a more holistic macro perspective instead of just looking from a micro perspective.
And well, you mentioned Google. We've got to bring this into the room. So Google is hot on the heels of Microsoft, I think. What do you think? I'm going to ask you this, Charlotte. This goes to all of you, really. What do you think is going through the heads of Google?
I think they will throw their full weight behind it, because this has only come out really like November, and it's already such a massive topic. I'm kind of the same mindset. I would have had a neutral card in the middle, because I think for me, like in essence, automation, great. It's everything that we do in like ad tech is purely around that, and you need it. But I think there's also the side of like there's so much that goes into, like, it depends what you feed it in to understand. And then you start having conversations about, well, how much does that change the outcome? And I think we all have unconscious and conscious bias towards things. It could so easily go in the wrong direction because it needs a fair amount of human influence. I think around in ad tech, when we're asking it to ingest data, like numbers, there is no, like, is it this, is this my opinion on that? It's a fact, so it can learn, for instance, like, you know what, it actually, that was really great on Data Insights, and then it can channel towards that, and that's great, there's no sort of bias. But then when you're asking for it to create content, how much are you going to touch on issues around anything? It could be race, it could be ethics, it could be gender equality. You could really go down a dangerous path so very quickly. I think this is going to go really fast, and there's nothing in place right now to keep it in check. And there's always an abuse of tech, as there's always the good side and there's always the bad side. So how fast are the likes of Google and Microsoft? Where will their ethics lie? Where will they create barriers? Because you're always going to have your mad scientists that go all the way to the end, but someone needs to rein them in. And there's never really anything that catches up fast enough with legislation. It's always been abused first. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I like, in essence, automation and AI. In this scenario, I'm sceptical.
Interesting. Go on, Jay.
Just off the back of that, the interesting thing is that OpenAI started as a non-profit. So the entire thought process behind it was that they were going to create something where they could kind of manage AI and make sure that it doesn't become what it is in Terminator, Skynet is going to take over. But what they realized was quickly is how profitable it was going to be. So it was interesting to watch how everybody just stopped talking about it being a non-profit. Everybody's kind of like, we're a non-profit. We're 4%. And everybody just stopped mentioning it. And I was going through, I was looking at all the articles, and everything just gradually, slowly stopped mentioning non-profit, and it all just became for-profit. And then it's like everybody just completely forgot, and now it's like, how can we use it to make businesses better, and so on and so on.
You make a good point, and actually, you were saying, Rob, that be wary of those companies that have come about in the last 6 months. And I saw it on LinkedIn, this guy that recommends all the add-ons to use. And one was a really clever one, ChatGPT for developers. Another one was an add-on you could do on your for creatives. And I was thinking, this is all brilliant. And I was bought in by it, going, I'm going to get that add-on. But I was thinking, you've all just built these in the last 6 months. Yeah. But I'm going to come to you, maybe, Jonathan, and go, all right, there are some scary stuff, but let's look at the positives. What do you think it's bringing us? What do you think AI and automation has brought either you or the industry, the media industry?
Just to quickly add on the last point, I think where I think Microsoft are super smart, and obviously we saw the Google mess of the launch of Bard and all of that afterwards. I think OpenAI has been around for a long time, right? And anything that is open source properly in that way, I think what that's given them is years and years and years of research that people have essentially done for free for them. I think in terms of how that's going to build the proper product, whether that's for Bing or everything else that they own, is still yet to be seen. They've shown a few great examples which looks amazing. I think that's really interesting in terms of smart business from Microsoft. But obviously they're still what, under 10% of the search market. So versus Google, I don't think it's quite. I've seen a lot of articles around. It's a nail in the coffin for Google search market. I don't think it's quite that yet.
They might earn back 1%.
Exactly. Where I think there's loads and loads of different ways where AI and automation has been amazing. And again, I'll give props to the Gum and Playground XYZ teams. I think we're really good in the digital media world from my perspective as a media agency individual. Are creating problems that don't really exist sometimes. There's something either, why aren't we taking advantage of the metaverse? There's 50 people on it. Why stop asking questions from the media panel? That can happen, right? That can happen, and it's all those shiny things. And I think the one thing which, remember the year of mobile, 10 years ago, when we were still talking about that? I don't think we've really nailed digital media creative. I think when you look at the best creative across advertising marketing generally, it's still on cinema, TV. It says, these big ads that creative engineers are willing to put a lot of time and resource in. I think there are businesses and companies who are doing a great job there, and Rob to my left is certainly one of those. That's soon now. Lunch
And value's going to be asked.
But I think that is a really important question. That's where AI has been created. So we've developed a tool that was actually open source from Google that we've essentially borrowed, which allows us to analyse video creative, and because you've got a very clear hypothesis, which is which elements of this video creative is reacting positive, is delivering positive brand awareness. It seems really simple. You think you could do that as a human. It's much harder than it seems. It's a very simple hypothesis that AI can break that video into lots of different increments, tell you what to do more of, tell you what to obviously do less of, and then make those variants. And I think just being able to have a simple hypothesis of what AI should be doing for your business and have a very clear example is a really useful thing. Because there's hundreds of things we could talk about. But I think creative is definitely a really important and exciting one.
And I think that is it, because one of the other questions was, can it be used for really engaging experiences? Can it be used for that? What's your thought? Tell me, can it be used for engaging experiences? Jay?
Yeah. Yes. So that's my answer. I think we were speaking earlier about the big panic for a lot of people is AI is going to replace human beings doing just doing tasks in general. And I was on this Discord group because that's the kind of stuff that I do, and I typed in, so it's an AI Discord group, and basically I typed in, I want Santa Claus on a boat with an axe attacking the
Don't
moon.
anyone go in Jay's head.
So I typed it in, and then it kicked out all these crazy images that it had just created within seconds. And I was just like, this is sick. And people were debating, well, doesn't this mean there's no need for artists anymore, and so on and so on. But what I'm seeing is that having AI creating all of these things then actually makes human art or human creativity more beneficial and more powerful. Because if I can type into AI and it creates these images, yeah, great, and I'll use them probably in a tweet but if I wanted some art in my home, I'm probably not going to use the AI generated image. I'm going to find the person that spent hours painstakingly creating that work. And it's the same with content creation. I'm going to go to that person that's actually, they've perfected their craft, they've built that, and it's a human being, because then the story behind that is so much more than actually, I just typed into a Discord chat and it kicked out.
100%. And we're saying, I'm going to chat, our own company, the Digital Voice, is a PR agency. And it's obviously a question of copywriters and editorial and your social media posts. You can spot a mile off the vanilla content coming out of ChatGPT on LinkedIn and in blogs and in thought leadership. So bad on anyone that thinks they're going to not be spotted. And actually I was going to ask this, so I'm going to, having just said that, would any of you put your hands up, and I'll come to you first and I might come to you, have you used ChatGPT for LinkedIn, email, content, blog, anything? Jay, Jonathan, Charlotte? Go on, Jonathan, what do you use it for?
We do like monthly articles called the Hot that go out to all of our clients, and I'll be honest, I'd left mine to the last minute. Stuck the question. It didn't give me a good enough answer, but it gave me enough to work
on it.
So
Flashing cursor syndrome, was it that?
Yeah.
It's like, instead of flashing cursor syndrome where you don't know where to start, the blank piece of paper, do you think it's that, Jonathan?
Exactly that, and then it allows, then you tailor it to exactly your voice and everything else. It wasn't brilliant for that, I must say.
I'm going to ask you, anyone here who's decided that they're going to give over their LinkedIn or otherwise to ChatGPT? Oh, interesting. I'll come to you, stay with the audience. Questions for our panel, who's got some? Either generated by ChatGPT or otherwise can.
So I actually used ChatGPT whilst we were sat here to create some questions.
Go on.
So this top one is, what skills will be needed in the future for professionals working in the advertising industry as AI and automation continue to transform the way we work on projects?
Now, I've already lost the will to live, ChatGPT.
That was the cut down version. They got smart.
No, I like that. That's the point, isn't it? That didn't add any flavour. But go on, who wants to take that question? Charlotte, do you want to take it?
Sure. I think it's just going to take a need for sort of more, I suppose, like a bird's eye view. I think it's the same way we might use something like a DSP now. You know, you tweak it and you pull the odd levers, but then you kind of let it do what it's good at. And I think it will be the same with this, depending on what scenario you're using it for. Like generating a question, obviously you'll tailor it and it will start to learn that it needs to be half the length or whatever. But it's sometimes in the creative space as well, like, you know, like with the David Guetta song, it might be like there's a certain beat in there that just really does not work, an undertone, whatever it may be. And it's always going to need just a little shift from a human. So I would say, I think it's going to be more of like almost like a generalised, broader knowledge of when and how to pull the odd levers here and there, is what I'd say.
Thanks, Okan. That was good to see what it came up with. Any other questions for our panel before we move on to our next session? Oh, lovely. Hi.
Hi. We've kind of touched on it initially, but last week there was a story in The Guardian about how AI was sort of sexualising female bodies in its scanning of what was deemed provocative against men. And I know we've kind of touched on it in terms of the biases that you can have in AI technology, but my question is, in terms of the scraping that these tools are doing, is that where the human eye comes in as really important? Because are we actually going to evolve? Like, technology is evolving, but is society going to evolve if it's scraping from publications that are maybe biased or racist or have underlying issues in society?
Go on, Jay.
Yes, I think it's like Rob was saying earlier, we're human beings. We all there wasn't saying you were saying anything like this, but as human beings, we've all got varied opinions. So then that's always a challenge when you look at, if you type in a certain question to OpenAI, it sounds like its founders. It sounds like the people that, when you ask them about like politics, it's very democratic, if we're being honest, and it's or it's very, whatever it may be, it's quite polarized in its responses a lot of the time. That's because of the people that are putting into it. And I think as it learns and as we get more data sets, it will get better. But I think the challenge is that, like everybody's been saying, it's what you put in is kind of what you get out. And I think it's actually more of a mirror. And then it makes us question then, so what do we like as a society? If this is what it's reflecting back at us, then if what it was scanning for those images and it was portraying women in a certain way or whatever, well, then what is that saying with the men in our society? And maybe we should do a better job on that, and then the AI will actually then be better.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And on that note, we'll let this panel take seats down. Thank you to Jay.